This conference will now be recorded.
You weren't thinking we were going to start on time, were you?
I'm thinking like right on time.
You forgot who's sitting here.
Come on.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Alderman Kittle.
Here.
Alderman Breeze.
Here.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Here.
Alderman Montello.
Here.
Alderman Volkert.
Here.
Alderman Kraft.
Here.
All right, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Adoption of agenda.
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Public comments. Is there somebody here that would like to make a public comment? I don't need to do that 3 times, do I? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go with consent agenda.
So move.
I will second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Sorry, roll call or voice?
Voice.
Voice.
Voice, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, moving on to new business. And sorry, I got to get this scrolled up here. Board and commission appointments. This is 7.1. We have 3 people that have been put forth by the mayor to Public Works. It's Tim Jovic. And to the Police and Fire Commission, it is Andrea Kyer and Jordan Ofterhar. So it will take an act of the council to approve those if that's your...
I would make a motion to approve the appointments by the mayor of Tim Jovic for Public Works, Police and Fire, Jordan Ofterhar, and Andrea Kyer, and suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second made to approve those appointments as they have been submitted. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
All right, 7.2, consideration of possible action on resolution 012201, creating tax increment district number 11, approving its project plan and establishing its boundaries.
Good evening, council. Also attending virtually is Sean Lentz with Ellers, who's our financial consultant.
Just a second, Rayanne. Carrie, can you hear Rayanne okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sean is also joining us tonight just virtually as he helps us through the tax increment district creation process. So just a little bit of an overview, and in your packet, what the council is being asked for consideration tonight is to pass a resolution that would approve the project plan and establish the TID boundaries for tax increment district 11. Tax increment district 11 encompasses the property that we refer to as the BB building. The project plan is attached to the council agenda as well as the resolution, but it just at a high elevation. I'll go through some touch points, and then Sean will go through a few of the slides just to recap as well. Again, the tax increment district is being created to help support the redevelopment of this area that would build a 50-unit, 55-plus housing complex in our downtown. On December 7th, the Joint Review Board met initially to review the project plan. Also, at that time, the Community Development Authority met and held a public hearing in regards to the tax increment district and passed a preliminary resolution recommending council action and approval of the tax increment district and the creation of those boundaries. So therefore, this evening, we're bringing forward for the council's consideration the adoption. This would be the final step that the council would need to take in order to create the tax increment district. Following your recommendation this evening, the Joint Review Board will meet one last time. That allows all of the taxing jurisdictions to review the project plan, and then they also need to pass a resolution that would adopt the boundaries and the project plan as well. And at that time, those documents then go to the state, and the tax increment district is completed and able to be moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean. Sean, if you just want to go through various few of the slides. If there's any questions from the council, we're happy to address any of those, and then we would address any questions in regards to the resolution that's attached as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rayanne. Appreciate it, and good evening, council members. Michelle, are you working on the slides?
You bet.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Could you go? Rayanne did a really good intro, so I'm just going to hit on a couple things. Could you go to slide number 3, the cooperation agreement? Thank you. I wanted to mention to the council one of the goals we had in creating this district was we wanted to find a pathway where we could use the tax increment district to reimburse the city for the funds that were originally outlaid to acquire the BB property. I won't go into all of the steps on page 3, but what I wanted to let the council know is that through work with city staff and with the city attorney, with Nick, we've put together a strategy where we involve the Community Development Authority, and we've had meetings with them about this topic, where they will be involved in the development agreement and will have through a process, will acquire the property from the city, and then using the tax increment revenue in the future, we will be able to ultimately reimburse the original costs that the city outlaid on the property to acquire it initially. Because we're creating the TID after that acquisition was made a couple of years ago, we had to get creative in it, and then also with some challenges on the tax side of things, income tax side of things, and also getting grant funding that the Girard companies were working on. We did have to come up with this a little bit more involved strategy that with the use of the CDA, though we have been able to achieve that objective in using tax increment 11. So we're very pleased with that. And Michelle, if you could go to slide number 4. The other item I wanted to just spend a second on, given that Rayanne did cover almost everything with her initial discussion on the topic of TID 11, is just to remind the council that the way we will be setting up the development agreement, and this is mostly in Nick's category, but the way it's set up is the annual tax increment revenues that are expected to come in from the new building that the Girard Corporation is doing, they'll flow in a couple different categories. One is to, as I just mentioned, reimburse the city through using the Community Development Authority for that initial outlay and other costs associated with the initial acquisition of the BB property. And on this particular page, that's listed as the category contribution to Community Development Authority. And then secondly, part of the development agreement is on a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning only from revenues that the city receives through the tax increment district, we will make annual payments to the developer to assist them in recouping costs associated with making this redevelopment project move forward and successful. And so you can see annually, the column in orange, we've got the revenues that are expected to come in from the development. And those revenues will be used to reimburse the Community Development Authority, which in big picture terms means reimbursing that initial acquisition. And then secondly, there'll be a stream of revenues that through the back and forth with the Gerards, we determined an amount to reimburse them to make the project feasible, financially feasible. And those will also flow out of that stream of revenues that come into Tax Increment District 11 from the redevelopment of the BB site. And again, just to mention one more time, that these payments, the payments titled Projected Development Agreement payments, those are predicated on what the TID collects, not on a guarantee of payment to the development group. It's called a pay-as-you-go approach, which allows the city to contribute to a project like this, but from a position of limited exposure, limited risk. Michelle, could you go to the last page then? Just a couple last things. As we'd mentioned, Rayanne mentioned, this tonight is the council approval or opportunity to certainly talk more about the tax increment district and ask questions. With approval, we'll meet with that joint review board tomorrow, and they will have a vote on tax increment district 11. The final steps are more administrative in filing the paperwork of the creation of the district with the state of Wisconsin, and we'll work on that in the coming months to get that in before the end of October deadline. But before moving forward with the resolution, if there's any questions that I can be of assistance on tax increment district number 11, would be happy to do so.
Yeah, Sean, this is Craig. How long do those payments go on from the TID to Gerard? How many years?
Sure. Michelle, could you go back to page 4 or slide 4? And if you scroll to the bottom, Craig, currently what we're showing is the payments will flow throughout the life of the tax increment district, ending in 2050. If the revenues from the tax increment district prove out to be larger, meaning that the taxable value of the facility is higher than what we're currently projecting, or the tax rate in the future, and the tax rate as always is not just the cities, but also the other taxing jurisdictions, that could be sooner, but right now it is over the life of the district going out to 2050.
Okay. And I see the tax rate here of $17 or $17.53. Is that a fixed tax rate, or is that different every year?
That rate is representative of the current equalized tax rate of the city, county, tech college, and school district for taxes levied in 21, collected in 22. Craig, it is variable. So we're basing it on the current rate, but it could certainly go up or down in the future. We're just for now projecting it out at the consistent same rate.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make that clear for people watching at home or whatever.
And Sean, it's interesting, the pay-as-you-go is something that we haven't, when we've done TIDs before, we haven't done pay-as-you-go quite as much. A lot of times the money is paid out, kind of the costs are incurred up front. And so the benefit is that the city isn't advancing the money to the developer. It's kind of going out to the developer as it comes in.
Yes, that's right, Mike. It is a less risky position, one that we certainly encourage when it works for the city and can work for the development as well. And in this case, I think it's a really, really good fit, and it allows the city to help contribute and jumpstart an economic development, redevelopment type project, but also doing it in a way that hopefully is small a risk as possible to the city and the city taxpayers.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Sean? I have actually a question for you, Noah, but go ahead.
I have a question for Sean. This is Tomlin Forrest. Hey, Sean, are those two streams of revenue simultaneous?
Yeah, the revenue that flows into tax increment District 11 it would be the stream of revenue, and then how it gets paid is going to be finalized in the development agreement, with the city getting the portion that on the slide number 4 that's on the screen right now is the contribution to the CDA. So that will, as the total revenues come in, they'll go to two different, it's kind of a waterfall effect. The money goes to the CDA, the money goes into that fund that is there to make a payment back to the developer. And both of those payments occur annually each year based on the percentages of payments per the development agreement that Nick has put together.
On my screen, it's a little small to see, but is there a total on what that reimbursement to the city is going to be through the CDA for the initial purchase?
It's $370,000, and it's got the acquisition price plus some other costs that the city has are in that 370 plus interest on the 370. So that's the 147,000. That's at the 2.5% interest rate over the term of the TID. So that would be the total payment to the city for this projection. And then the other payments, the just under $1,450,000 are the payments to the developer.
Thank you.
I have a question for Noah or someone. The rendering on one of these pages is just a generic rendering. It has nothing to do with
Yeah, so we don't have the final site plan. What was included in the packet was a rendering from this past summer, but they're still finalizing the design, in part just based on supply issues, just to see even what type of materials they're going to have, especially on the facade. So we have
the aesthetics. The exterior aesthetics aren't approved by anyone yet.
Correct. So the site plan would have to come to the Plan Commission this spring for the new building.
Okay, thank you.
And Noah, my question for you, I think a lot of folks that are dialed into this kind of even on the surface are kind of thinking about, okay, they're talking about a TID, but it's the BB property, and timing of what folks can expect to see happen now. And I don't know if we've got to talk about that yet, demolition, et cetera, but I just did a quick high elevation, the schedule for that building to come down in the next 2 months, I think. Can you just chat about that and when construction might start, et cetera?
Yep, absolutely. So in December, the city council awarded the demolition contract to JCON, which is a contractor in the Twin Cities area. We had a pre-demolition meeting last week with the contractor to talk about the project timeline. They will be mobilizing later this week. However, what the public will actually see is the demolition would start in early February. So the first few weeks will be focused on asbestos abatement, exploration for any underground fuel tanks. The demolition of the building, though, most visibly would be beginning early February. We would anticipate roughly by the first week of March that the demolition would be completed for the building. So we had a meeting last week with the contractor as well as staff. Obviously, there's a lot of moving pieces to that, disconnecting electricity, water, sewer, et cetera, for the site, as well as security for the site as well. We don't anticipate any street closures at this time. However, the sidewalk will be blocked off. You'll see security fencing going up in the next couple of weeks. So you'd see a 6-foot chain link fence around the site. So you'll start to see some signs similar to if you've seen the fencing around
Dakota Meadows.
Yes. Yep. So so we'll start to see some of that. However, really what the public will see is that the true demolition of the building would likely start that first week of February. And really by early mid-March, the demolition will be completed. The contractor won't be filling in the entire basement because the proposed project has plans for underground parking. And so a portion of the foundation of the building will remain. In terms of salvaging any portions of the current building, if you recall, there was a list that we had previously approved, some items that the Heritage Center had expressed an interest in and could potentially be incorporated into the new building. We're not sure if all those will be salvageable or not. Some of those, for example, some of the blocks in the building that have the BB name in it, they may be able to salvage that, or that may crumble, when they try to remove it. There's a couple old safes down in the basement, a few other items that have been identified. But really, by early March, that the building will be gone.
And is it fair to say that once the new building's done with underground parking, if I understand right, there's going to be a sign down there that says you're not allowed to say my car is dead?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, you'd have to know something about the BB building to understand why that would be significant. All right, thank you. Anybody else got any other questions?
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve Resolution 012201, which will create the tax increment District Number 11.
I'll second it.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve this Resolution 012201. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
All right, motion is approved. Moving on to the repeal of the PUD for the Deerfield. Beth.
Yes, good evening, City Council. I have the next 3 items on the agenda. All of them went to the Plan Commission with recommendations to move forward for approval here at the City Council meeting tonight. So I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. If there's any questions, please feel free to let me know on that. So the first item is the repeal of the Deerfield PUD, which is a planned unit development. For those of you who are unsure what that is, it's a document that used to be allowed in our ordinances to have them have separate types of zoning regulations, either setbacks or separate type of green space requirements and those kind of things. So when we went through the repealing process for the Deerfield, for the PUD, staff read through that, and it's not a normal PUD, planned unit development. It actually was just a written document that talked a little bit about what they're going to do in the future and their anticipated use of the site. So not a normal PUD. And when we had the group, the Presbyterian Homes group come in with an application for a new 24-unit in 55-plus living on that same site, they were approved for a conditional use permit for that site at the January Plan Commission meeting. So really what they want to do is repeal this PUD along with staff approval to repeal that. It just doesn't make sense to have that there any further. So with that in mind, the process we took is it went to Development Review Committee. There was a public notice that was held in the paper. We heard this actually at the Plan Commission on the November 2nd meeting. So it's been a couple of months since we are bringing this back to the council, and tonight for final approval at the City Council. Next slide, please. And so just taking a quick look at this PUD, it's in the orange kind of divided area right there where Michelle is pointing. Basically, the property owner is requesting removal of the PUD district, and we would use the Z4 district standards that are from our ordinance moving forward on this property. With that in mind, the Planning Commission and DRC is recommending approval for repealing of this particular PUD.
All right, so you're looking for a motion to approve an ordinance repealing the PUD district for the Deerfield.
That is correct.
Anybody have any questions for Beth?
I don't know if this is the time. Do we have any kind of, Presbyterian Homes is a nonprofit, correct?
That is correct.
They don't pay taxes, correct?
That is correct. They pay a payment in lieu of taxes.
So is that going to be adjusted? Is that going to be
Affected?
affected, looked at, because of the property value that's going to be,
Added
you
to
know,
this.
a
I
large
believe
increase?
We are looking at that with this group. We have met with them previously, so we are considering that.
Okay.
Currently, they do pay a payment in lieu of taxes.
And where would that come? Would that come to the council? Would that come to?
The final approval, I think, is a question he's asking, Beth, for that.
Yes, that would come back to the City Council.
Okay. Thank you. I would make a motion to repeal the PUD property.
I'll second it.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
All right, next up, Beth, the amendment to the Armstrong-Skoglund PUD.
So same process that was held, we brought it to the Development Review Committee with the public notice in the paper. This one was heard at a Plan Commission public hearing January 4th and here tonight for final approval for this amendment. Next slide, please. As you're looking at this slide, it's a little bit harder to see, but Michelle can point to it. This PUD was established November 11th of 2013. It's 3 lots and 1 outlot in what we call the Skoglund property. Obviously, it's the Skoglund Armstrong PUD. Mr. Armstrong owns the lot that's the furthest to the south of this property. This area is actually an underlying Z6 zoning district, and one of the PUD requirements in this is very restrictive, and we want to take that requirement out of the PUD. So this was brought forward by city staff. Take the requirement out of the PUD and have us flow through to just using the Z6 district standards for the one requirement. The requirement is the allowable lot coverage. In Z6, we allow in this area 100% of coverage. The PUD district has a maximum of 30%. So we did have an application that came for the lot furthest to the north for a medical facility. And to kind of make this happen, we do need to follow the Z6 zoning regulations for that, and that's why we're looking to amend this PUD district. With that in mind, the Plan Commission and DRC is recommending approval of the amendment to this PUD district.
All right, anybody have any other questions for Beth?
I would like to make a motion to amend the Armstrong-Skoglund PUD
As presented.
presented.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries, Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
All right, amendment of the zoning ordinance regarding allowance of short-term rentals, something that wasn't on anybody's radar 20 years ago.
No, but if you want a VRBO, it is on everybody's radar now. So there's a lot of communities that are currently looking at short-term rental units. New Richmond being one of them. We had a request from a citizen to take a really close look at how we do our short-term rentals here in the city of New Richmond. And we had a section in our ordinance, very small section in our ordinance that addressed this. And basically it said that anything on short-term rental had to be a owner occupied, so similar to like a bed and breakfast, which on short-term rentals, that's not a normal occurrence. So our ordinance had something in there that really didn't make sense. So in taking a big look picture at this, we want to change the ordinance and go to a license procedure, which you'll see in the next agenda item. So for now, we brought it to the Plan Commission at a public hearing on January 4th, and it's here for the City Council's consideration tonight. Next slide, please. So we're looking to do 2 things in the ordinance. We're looking to revise the definition to eliminate owner-occupied requirement. Then we're looking to amend Table 3 to change it from a conditional use permit to permitted use in zoning districts Z1 through Z6. So not in the industrial district, but in all other districts, making it a permitted use, meaning they have to come to the city to get a license, and the approval process would go to the City Council. I'll explain a little bit more about that on my next section, but that's what the Planning Commission has made a recommendation and city staff to move forward with approval.
Just out of curiosity, something I've read in the League of Wisconsin Municipality magazine talks about room tax.
They do have to pay room tax. So once they apply to the city and they receive their short-term rental, they are then required to pay quarterly room tax, and they would get that information from the city.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Beth?
Yeah, once they get their initial license, to be able to put their home in a VRBO or
Short-term
a
rental.
whatever short-term, is that a one-time process? Or do you want to talk about that
It'll
at
be
the
a
next?
yearly, we'll talk about that next, but it'll be a yearly process. They'll have
Okay.
to apply every year so that we can
And
kind of
that's
keep
common.
track of that.
That's what every other city does, what every municipality
Nope, that's not
does.
what every other city does. That's what we're presenting. There are certain cities like the city of Hudson who has their regulations in their zoning ordinance, but they're super strict. You have to come and get a conditional use permit. What we're proposing is to follow.
Beth, can you just hang on till we get to that? I'm sorry, Craig asked you a question. It's a legitimate question, but she's going to
Yeah.
cover that next.
Okay.
So do you folks want to take action on this particular recommendation right now?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we approve zoning ordinance amendment for short-term rentals.
I'll second.
I'll
Okay,
second
motion's-
that.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Please call a roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes. All right, now we're going to talk about proposed license process for short-term rentals. And Craig, I certainly didn't mean to cut you off. I just
No, I
thought,
understand the questions. That's why I asked prior to if this is when I
Yep.
should be asking this, and I
no, we're good.
didn't know it was going to be that long a process.
We're good.
So when staff took a close look at the short-term rentals, should we do an ordinance rewrite and kind of put some stipulations in there for a conditional use permit, or should we go to a license process? We researched it through St. Croix County mainly, and we did look at a few other communities. However, St. Croix County does all of the work for the short-term rentals, so there's really no reason for us to go through a conditional use process. So here's what the county is. They're an agent for the state who licenses everyone in St. Croix County who has any type of a short-term rental. You're required to go to the county to get your license. And during that process, the county has to follow the state procedures. They do a site plan and a review. They do an application process with fees. They do a site visit and inspection, all the things that we would require in our ordinance, but the county's already doing it. So once the county issues the license, the city can then say, hey, we will allow you to apply for a short-term rental here in the city of Richmond as long as you can show proof that you've gotten your county license. So really, the county is doing all the work and they're following all the regulations. There's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. So what we're proposing, and in your packet, you have a couple of items that I've shown you, which is what the county does for their site plan, their application process, and we've created a short-term rental application process for the city of Richmond. What we'd like to do is put it on a little bit of a separate time period. So the county's licenses run from July 1st through June 30th every year. They need to go in and get their license renewed or apply again for their license, or if you're having a new license. So the city of New Richmond would like to run ours August 1st so we can see proof of their license through July 31st so that they can come in and apply to the city of New Richmond. We can bring it to the council. They have already their license through the county. They have their proof. They apply. It's a very short one-page application. It's a $50 fee. Comes before the city council for approval. So that's what Michelle and I and Noah are recommending moving forward.
Can you tell me what the fees are for the county for their?
I don't know if they have separate fees for their site plan, but I think their application fee is $250.
Someone who's going to do a VRBO is looking at a $300 fee.
Application fee for sure. Now, I don't know if like the city of Richmond, if they have a separate fee for if we were to come for a conditional use permit, there'd be a separate fee. So for their site plan for the county, I don't know. In speaking with Lori Diaby, I spoke with her last week. She didn't say there was additional fees, but I can't guarantee that there aren't.
What's an
That was
interesting,
my original question. Once you get your license from the county, is that good forever? Is there inspections?
There's a once-a-year inspection, and I assume that their application process is a yearly application because they do have an annual inspection. So
But not an annual fee?
I think it is. I think you have to go
the
there annually,
250 is
similar to what
every
you
year?
would do for the city.
yeah, it's interesting, the question that Alderman Vries asked. If you look down through the select all the license types you wish to apply for, and under restaurant licenses, I mean, there is a list that is, that's almost 2 pages long of the different things that are impacted by the fees that they collect. Not necessarily for a VRBO, but I guess it depends if you're serving food or whatever. I think, Craig, your question is, it's interesting. that $300, right, or $350 roughly, we're kind of guessing, yeah, you're gonna have to, it sounds like, we don't really know that, but they're gonna have to pay every year. It sounds like the license is good for that 12-month period of time. And Michelle, do you have something to say on that?
I was going to say was there are additional fees at the county, like if you have a swimming pool or if you have other things that along with your VRBO. So it starts at $250, but depending on your property, it could be more than that for the initial inspection and site plan review.
You know, it's interesting, just looking through this form, I don't think I saw a spot where it asked, I'm just curious, you know, hey, what are you charging?
I don't think they do. I think that's up to the people who are renting it out. I don't think that the county may ask that, but I don't know that they do.
Well, the whole idea of a room tax is based on the fee you pay, and nobody knows the fees somebody pays.
But our forms for room tax would, we would send out forms that they would have to put those numbers together.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I didn't see it in there. All right, does anybody else have any questions other questions for Beth?
I just have some concerns that that's an expensive process for someone who's going to be doing it 2 times a year. Sure, if you're doing it, every weekend, $300 doesn't seem like much, but it just seems like a pretty high tax. I'm not saying we shouldn't have this, and I know you need to have some regulations. Most of the fees are through the county. We're just piggyback.
We really are. We just want to be able to keep track of them. We want to make sure they're following the state rules for short-term rentals. And we want to be able to, when they come in each year, make sure that we're taking them off the list or keeping them on the list. And really for us, a $50 fee is just really administrative costs for that. And it is fairly low. So if you're renting out or you're doing a VRBO, most of the time you don't live there and you're going to be renting it out more than a couple of times a year. I actually think a $300 fee is fairly reasonable a year for that.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, as many of you know, I'm the city attorney in Hudson as well. We have in Hudson a similar type ordinance to what's being proposed. We have a couple of problematic properties in Hudson right now. And it is very helpful to work collaboratively with the county to have both the county's requirements and the city's requirements. From the city's perspective in Hudson, first and foremost, you want to know where your VRBOs are and where your Airbnbs are. I mean, that's the primary issue, is knowing and understanding where these particular rentals are, because otherwise, they could be located in any neighborhood anywhere, and if you don't have an idea as to where they are, you can't keep track of them. That's important for room tax. It's important for building code. It's important for a whole host of reasons. But then, ultimately, if there are challenges with these properties, and sometimes they turn into bachelor pads, or they turn into bachelorette parties, or whatnot, which is kind of what we're starting to experience in Hudson a little bit. You certainly need to know and understand, where they are, what the issues are, and how you deal with them, and how you work cooperatively with the county. So, there is that additional fee, but it is important, and there is work that will be done by the city in terms of tracking, monitoring, and making sure that these properties are compliant and consistent with the neighborhoods in which they're located.
I think, Pete, to your point, I guess this isn't something, based on the cost, this probably isn't something somebody's going to do for 1 week out of the year, just because there's too much cost to make it worthwhile. And I guess my point is, it almost is kind of saying to folks, hey, I just on a whim, let's put our house up for VRBO, in a couple of weeks. And this kind of, the process itself kind of precludes people from doing that. And I think the best point, the idea that if somebody's doing this multiple times, the fee probably isn't an inordinate amount of money, but I understand it's not free. But to Nick's comment, somebody's going to go there and do an inspection, which I do think is super important. And just to imagine it, again, the majority of this is county costs, and I agree with Beth. It doesn't make sense for us to reinvent the wheel. The county's already got a process. We're going to use their process and use them to kind of oversee this, and we have a little bit of administrative cost.
And I will say to Pete's comments, on our application and on the counties, they say this: no property within the city, or this is a county too, may be used as a short-term rental for more than 10 nights each year unless the application has been filled out. So people can do that up to 10 nights on their own without the application. So if somebody's looking for a couple of weekends, both the state and the county are saying they can do that. Anything over 10, they have to get their license.
Perfect, thank you.
So for example, in Pete's case, if he wants to VRBO his house for the fat tire thing, I mean, it's prime location there, so there you go.
Yep, if he wants to do just a weekend a year, he's good.
No certificate, no inspection, you're good to go.
I'm ready to go, but not the other
Right,
half. If you want to work on that for me, Mike, that'd be great.
Happy to do that, just with my negotiating skills. All right, so we have the proposed license. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is there any process, I guess I haven't reviewed this, on like checking with neighbors like we do on other ordinances? Do they have to get approval from their neighbors? I mean, with the
They do
concerns
not.
like Nick brings up, are we gonna start fielding complaints if, you know, somebody has a rental property that's turning into a party house or that's turning into some kind of.
Right, and I think if that's what we're gonna be ended up doing, we probably could go in and take a look at that. But the county also, and us as a city staff, we're not going to start doing neighborhood meetings if somebody wants to do a VRBO, because they can get approved without neighborhood approval. It's in there, so.
But the point there is that you know where these rentals are located, and when you start fielding complaints, the city's leverage in enforcement and in dealing with these is the license itself.
You pull the license.
You revoke the license, it's a privilege, it's not a right, and so if they don't have the license, they can't do it. So homeowners, property owners do tend to react pretty well to the licensure requirement because it does give them the opportunity to rent their property, and there are some additional responsibilities that come with that.
So at this time, it looks like you're looking for a motion to continue moving forward with the license process. It's not, we're not at the end stage yet, apparently.
I think we are. We have an application process here. I think we're looking forward, looking for an approval process to move forward with the license process, to start that going, and to put the $50 fee on our schedule of fees.
All right,
So move.
there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
We have to suspend the rules for this?
I don't know, do we?
I don't believe so.
No.
Okay. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes,
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
All right, motion is approved. 2022 Street Utility Projects Design/Construction Agreement.
So included in your packet this evening is a proposed agreement from Short Elliott Hendrickson for both the design and construction services related to our 2022 street and utility projects, which include North Fork Street from County Road K to 500 feet east of Bergetta Drive, as well as Oak Avenue. And included in is a breakdown in their proposal, both for the design phase and the construction phase, and it's broken out between the two, Oak Avenue and North Fourth. So the total design cost for the two projects combined would be $53,300. The total cost for the construction phase would be at $101,800. And as we've discussed in the past, the majority of the design work for the North Fourth Street project would be done in-house by Eric Evenson, our Public Works Director. I have reached out to Star Prairie Township in regards to having our first meeting with our Urban Reserve Commission because there's one parcel that has frontage along the North Fourth Street project. And so discussion for that group, whether that property should be remain in the township or if it should be attached into the city of New Richmond. So our recommendation from staff this evening would be to proceed with approving the contract as presented by SEH in the total amount of $155,100.
All right, so you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to that effect?
I would make a motion, Mike, that we approve the design and construction supplemental letter agreement with SCH in the amount of $155,100 for 2022 street and utility projects.
All right, thank you, Carrie. There's a motion made. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Motion's been seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I know I'm not going to get very far with this discussion, but, you know, we continue to get these outside consulting services, which I think are very, very high. I think at some point the city's should look at bringing more of these projects in-house. I know the advantages of having outside consultants, doing it in-house. Need to look at trying to save some money on these consulting. I'm not going to hold up this one, but I think we really need to start looking more at doing in-house work.
And I think that begs a larger discussion relative to the scope of the work that we're hiring.
Yep.
I mean, you bring up a good point, and I think there's some nuances here that need to be part of that discussion. So I think it's good discussion material. Any other comments or questions?
No, just to Pete's comment, thoughts. That's something we've continued to do the last 10 to 15 years. When I got on the council, our costs for SEH were a multiple of 5 or 6 times, maybe more, than they are today, until we hired an engineer that was in-house that could do a lot of these things. Jeremiah did a lot of these things that saved us tons and tons of money that we used to just have SEH or an outside consultant firm do a lot of those engineering things. Since we've hired that, and Eric's doing a great job also with being able to take some of that responsibility himself, which is great. Are we at the place where we have to figure out what that employee that would, or employees, or multiple employees that would be able to do everything in-house, is that worth the cost of the fees that we're paying that? So it's a conversation that we need to continue to have. It's a process that we've been working on for the last multiple years and have done a great job with containing some of these costs in-house, and I think that should be said. So you got a point. It's a great point. It's something we've worked on and been successful with. We just don't know what that perfect number is to say we could do everything in-house, as opposed to having outside engineers do some of that other stuff. So
I think a potential response to that is that to get some feedback from Eric, a discussion about just the whole thing about when we hire this kind of work done. I think that the simple question is, and I'm not asking him about this particular project, but why? What are the reasons why more of this work can't be done in-house? There's a reason. I have no idea what they are. We should know that so we can have that conversation, answering the questions that both Craig and Pete have brought up. So,
and it's the licenses and the qualifications of doing certain size
Sure.
projects that
Yeah.
one can do and one can't.
I think there's a number of things there, but it just definitely begs more conversation. So any other discussion about this particular issue?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how much just last year we paid to them in consulting fees. Yeah,
Or all of our
Yeah, we can certainly pull
just
that.
SEH.
Yeah, if the council's interested in that, we can certainly show those amounts.
And then if you'd be so kind to see what we did 10 to 15 years ago, to see how much that we have saved in the last 10 to 15 years on what our consulting fees are now versus what they are 10 years ago.
Yeah, we can certainly show that, and I think it was a discussion going forward too of, there's some communities that have 2 or 3 engineers on their staff.
Right.
And they find that it's, more affordable to do that versus contracting out. And sometimes a portion of those fees are also reimbursed by developers as part of their escrow amounts up front. So, I think definitely a conversation we can continue.
All right, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert. Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
All right, communications and miscellaneous. Is there anything?
Nothing at this time.
I'm looking at you, you're looking at me. Okay. All right, then we are going to go into closed session per Wisconsin statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties. We actually have a couple of items on there. I don't know, Nick, is it important for me to mention all of them? Okay, so finishing the first one, the investing of public funds or conducting other specified public businesses whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session. And then you want me to read through the PIDs that are listed there or not necessary?
Yeah, just read the topics for each
Okay.
one.
And then 9.2 per Wisconsin statute 19851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, interim fire chief term. And then 9.3 per Wisconsin statute 19851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public businesses whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and per Wisconsin statute 19851F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specified persons, fire department service award program, length of service award program. So, is there a motion to go into closed session?
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Is there a second? No second. Motion's been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert. Yes. Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
I would take that one out.
All right, if anybody needs a break, we'll just a couple minutes. Yeah, we're gonna do that first.
All right, I'm going to exclude myself then.